What if the greatest virtue you were taught was actually a trap? From the moment you took your first breath, the world began whispering a lie into your ear. They called it morality. They wrapped it in religion stories, fairy tales, bedtime lessons. Be good, they said. Put others first. As a child, it felt noble, like love, like purpose. You were told that giving was holy, that sacrifice made you strong, that to earn love you had to abandon yourself. But what if that wasn't virtue at all? What if it was a leash? As you grew older, you started to feel it. Every time you said yes when your soul screamed no, something inside you cracked. They told you that bleeding for others was strength, but you noticed the strong didn't bleed. They took, they rose, they ruled, while you stayed stuck, exhausted, applauded for your martyrdom but never rewarded. Because the truth is brutal. Selflessness is not a virtue. It's a mechanism, a tool used to tame the powerful before they even realize they're dangerous. They dressed obedience as love. They told you to be small and called it humble. But inside, something was always uneasy. And now, finally, you see it for what it is. You weren't born to serve. You were born to choose. And your first act of power is to unlearn everything they made you believe was good. They never built statues for the ones who gave everything away. Look around. Do you see monuments for the martyrs? Or do you see towers named after the ruthless portraits of those who dared to claim power without apology? Since childhood, you were told that sacrifice would be rewarded, that if you gave your best, the world would give it back. But as the years passed, you realized the world doesn't reward goodness, it consumes it. The generous are drained, the kind are overlooked, and those who never ask never receive. Meanwhile, those who took, who demanded, who stood tall with sharp elbows and silent pride rose. They weren't apologizing for their ambition. They weren't asking permission to win, and they weren't waiting to be told they were worthy. They decided they were. That's the harsh truth. Most refuse to accept. The world doesn't obey the selfless. It doesn't serve the kind. It kneels for those who know how to take space, say no, and protect their purpose like a crown. You've spent too long trying to be the one who's always there, the one who gives without asking, who serves without recognition. But power never belonged to the compliant. It belongs to the selfish, not the careless, not the cruel, but the ones who choose themselves first and never feel guilty for doing it. There's a moment you'll remember, not dramatic, not loud, but unforgettable. The moment you said yes when everything inside you screamed no. It looked small at the time. A favor, a compromise, a moment of politeness. But that one, yes, it cost you a piece of your spine. You thought you were being kind. You thought saying yes made you good, loyal, respectable. But with every yes that betrayed your instincts, you weren't being noble, you were being erased. It started early. You said yes to your parents out of fear, yes to teachers to avoid shame, yes to friends so you wouldn't be abandoned. And over time, that habit hardened into self-sabotage, a reflex, a way of living where everyone else's needs came before your sanity. They clapped for your generosity while quietly draining you. They praised your loyalty, but only because it served them and you. You kept bleeding quietly, repeatedly, until your yes became your prison. The truth is simple. Every time you agree to what violates your peace, you teach people to cross your lines. Every time you comply from guilt, you betray the deepest part of yourself. Power doesn't grow in obedience. It grows in boundaries, and the first step is terrifying. Learning to say no without guilt, without apology, without needing anyone to understand. Because your life cannot belong to you until your no becomes non-negotiable. You didn't notice it at first how early the cage was built around you. It wasn't made of iron. It didn't need to be. It was stitched into lullabies and bedtime stories, whispered in classrooms, preached from pulpits, rewarded in family dinners. Be good, they said. Give more. Put others first, and so you obeyed. You became the helper, the giver, the one who never asked. You learned that saying no made people disappointed, that having needs made you selfish, that standing your ground meant you were difficult, so you buried your fire, your instincts, your boundaries until you forgot where they even were. And all along you thought this made you virtuous. But now, you're waking up. You're starting to feel the weight of those invisible bars. The pressure to serve, to comply, to keep peace while losing yourself in the process. And you realize this cage was never built to protect you. It was designed inside to neutralize you. Because a person who's too busy saving others has no energy left to rise for themselves. A person who's addicted to being needed never asks what they need, and the world, it doesn't reward the endlessly giving. It devours them and exalts those who broke free. Selflessness isn't always kindness. Sometimes it's the oldest trick in the book to keep powerful people too exhausted to fight. There's an unspoken rule in human nature. People don't value what comes too easily. And the more you give without being asked to, the less they see your worth. At first it feels good being dependable, being the one who's always there. They smile, they thank you, but soon the gratitude fades and the expectation begins. Suddenly your effort isn't admired, it's assumed. Your time isn't appreciated, it's demanded. What you once gave from the heart now becomes a requirement you never signed up for. And when you finally hesitate just once, they look at you not with understanding but with disappointment, as if you broke the agreement, when in truth they were never entitled to you. That's how exploitation begins, quietly, subtly dressed as friendship, love, or loyalty. And you taught them how to treat you by giving without cost, by serving without pause, by offering without limits. But here's the truth: they won't admit the more available you are, the more invisible you become. People don't cherish the overgiver. They drain them, and when the storm comes, they never protect the selfless. They abandon them first. So ask yourself, what have you made too easy? What have you been giving that no one has earned? Because in a world obsessed with taking, only the rare are respected, and only the earned are remembered. The rare is always remembered. The scarce is always respected. Power has never belonged to the overly available. It belongs to those who choose when to appear, when to speak, when to give, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. Think of the people who held your attention the longest. Were they the ones who were always reachable, or the ones who made their presence feel like a privilege? That's the paradox of value. The more selectively you give, the more precious your attention becomes. When you say yes to everything, your yes means nothing. But when you say no calmly, firmly, without guilt, suddenly your yes becomes sacred. People lean in, they listen, they adjust, because now access to you is no longer assumed, it's earned. The strong are not strong because they give more. They are strong because they know when not to. They protect their energy like it's royal currency. They know that giving without discretion doesn't make you generous. It makes you easy to use. And once you're seen as easy, you're seen as replaceable. So step back, withdraw, choose with precision, because power is not loud. It's not desperate. It's the quiet presence that commands attention. The hand that holds back, not the one that overreaches. And the soul that knows I give. Not because I have to, but because you earned it. Empires are not built on kindness. They're built on focus, relentless, unapologetic focus. And behind every empire stands someone who made the decision to choose their vision over validation, their mission over relationships, their rise over approval. The world wants you to believe that selfishness is a sin, that putting your goals above someone else's comfort makes you cruel. But look closely. Do you think the great builders of history paused to explain their ambition? Do you think they waited for permission to lead? They didn't. Because they knew that to build anything that lasts, you must first learn to protect what fuels you. Your time, your clarity, your direction, not out of malice, but out of necessity. Strategic selfishness is not recklessness. It's discipline. It's knowing that not every call deserves an answer. Not every demand deserves your energy. It's the ability to say, my purpose comes first without flinching, while others waste years pleasing, fixing, sacrificing you. Build brick by brick, move by move. And when they finally notice your empire rising, they'll call you cold, ruthless, changed. Let them. Because those who called you selfish were never going to help you build anyway. They just wanted a piece of you for free. But builders don't bleed for applause. They rise for legacy. Your energy is not infinite. Every conversation, every favor, every hour spent solving someone else's problems, it all costs you. But no one tells you that. They just keep taking. You've been taught to give your time, your attention, your effort without asking if it's worth it. You show up, you help, you sacrifice, and while you're putting out everyone else's fires, your own dreams are quietly burning to ash. Here's the truth. No one teaches, energy is currency, and the powerful don't spend it recklessly. They invest it where it multiplies, where it builds, where it returns. If someone drains you but never fills you, it's not love. It's a transaction with no return. If a situation consumes your focus and leaves you empty, it's not obligation, it's theft. The world is full of people eager to feed off your generosity, but you're not here to be a fuel station for the directionless. You're here to rise, and that means cutting off anything that burns without building. Spend your energy where it grows your empire, not where it keeps others comfortable. They told you that being generous makes you good. That if you give enough love, enough sacrifice, enough people will value you. But they forgot to mention one thing. Generosity without limits isn't noble, it's self-erasure. You thought giving would earn you respect, instead it earned you expectation. The more you offered, the more they assumed. What once felt like kindness became a quiet obligation, and you didn't even notice when the line between love and use began to blur. People don't respect endless giving. They exploit it. They call you dependable until you say no. They praise your loyalty until you set a boundary. Then they turn cold, distant, disappointed, revealing what was always true. They were loyal not to you, but to what they could take from you. If your generosity is never questioned, never protected, never measured, it becomes a door without a lock, and anyone can walk through. The truth is simple. Giving is only powerful when you control it, when it's a choice, not a reflex, and when it builds you as much as it helps others. Otherwise, you're not being kind. You're just being drained. The most powerful word in the world is just 2 letters long. No. But for most of your life, it's been the hardest one to say. You were taught that no hurts people, that it makes you selfish, cold, unkind. So you said yes again and again while your soul whispered in protest. You said yes to stay, liked to keep the peace to avoid guilt, but each yes came with a cost: your time, your energy, your identity. And slowly, piece by piece, you disappeared beneath the weight of everyone else's expectations. Until one day you realized, power doesn't begin with dominance, it begins with refusal. Saying no isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It draws the line between who owns your time and who doesn't. It protects your mission from distraction. It shields your energy from being harvested by the unworthy. The world may not applaud when you say no, but it will begin to respect you, because those who can say no without guilt, without apology, without hesitation, are the ones who cannot be controlled, and in a world addicted to taking, the one who knows when to say no is already winning. There comes a moment when silence becomes your weapon. At first, your absence feels like a ripple, quiet, subtle, barely noticed, but soon they begin to panic. Not because you yelled, not because you fought, but because you stopped showing up. You stopped answering calls, stopped being their emotional first responder, stopped giving your energy away like a free sample tray. And suddenly they They feel the void, because deep down they knew they were feeding on you. They just hoped you'd never realize it. You see, influence isn't built through endless availability, it's built through scarcity. When you're always accessible, people stop valuing your presence. They assume you'll always say yes, always pick up, always bend. But the second you withdraw that access, they're forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Your presence was never theirs to own, and that's when your power begins. Because true influence isn't about being liked, it's about being earned. And the moment someone assumes they can have you without effort, without respect, without investment, you've already lost the game. When your time becomes predictable, your value diminishes. You fade into the background. One more person in the crowd, one more option on their list. But the powerful, they are never optional. They are the exception. Their time is expensive, their attention is earned, and their boundaries are unwavering. They don't explain why they're unavailable. They are unavailable. This is the law of value. What's easy to reach is easy to forget. But what's rare is revered. That's why your time must be protected with military discipline. It is your most precious currency, and the world is full of emotional pickpockets waiting to waste it. Not everyone deserves a piece of you. Not everyone is worth the cost of your energy. And the ones who protest the loudest when you say no, they were never here for you. They were here for what they could take. So let them call you cold. Let them say you've changed, because now you're going to have to do the one thing you were always afraid of. Be the villain in someone else's story. That's the price of power, the cost of freedom. You cannot become the master of your life while still begging to be understood. They'll say you're selfish, that you've hardened, that you've turned your back. But those words aren't truth. They're just the screams of people who lost control over you. And if they hate you for building boundaries, they were never with you in the first place. They loved the access, not the person, the benefit, not the bond. This is where real transformation begins. When you stop needing to be seen as good, when you stop softening your no, when you stop sacrificing your peace for someone else's comfort. Because to build an empire, you must be willing to be misunderstood, to hold the line when it's lonely, to become unavailable, unapologetic, and unshakable. The world won't hand you power for being agreeable. It will only respect you when it has no other choice. There's a reason kings never sat with commoners, and generals never begged foot soldiers for understanding. Access destroys mystique, and mystique is the bedrock of power. You've been taught to be generous, to give freely, to be endlessly available, as if your worth increases the more accessible you are. But the truth is brutal when people can reach you at any time. They begin to believe they own your time. When you give too much without cost, without pause, without boundaries, you become ordinary, expected, replaceable, and no one respects the replaceable. You think you're being kind, but you're being consumed. You think you're being supportive, but you're being trained to be used. The moment you step back, they feel betrayed, not because you wronged them, but because they lost access to what they never earned in the first place. That's the paradox of generosity. Give too much and you erase your value. But this doesn't mean you become cruel. It means you become clear. Selfishness. Real selfishness is not about harming others. It's about refusing to harm yourself for them. It's not recklessness. It's restraint. It's not arrogance. It's awareness. You stop handing out your energy like a flyer in the wind. You stop bleeding for people who wouldn't lift a finger if the pain were yours. Being selfish means you no longer explain your boundaries. You enforce them. It means you no longer negotiate your time. You protect it. It means you understand that saying yes to everything is not generosity. It's self-destruction, dressed as virtue. And that's why the world resents the selfish, not because they're evil, but because they're immune to control. The emotionally manipulative. Call it coldness, the needy call it distance, but underneath those words is fear, because they know they can no longer pull your strings. They can no longer extract your energy without paying the price. And that makes them uncomfortable. But the powerful, they don't bend to discomfort. They don't apologize for choosing themselves. They understand a truth the weak will never accept. This world does not follow the kindest. It follows the clearest. It obeys the strongest. Look at history. The figures we remember most were not always loved. They were respected. They weren't endlessly available. They were scarce. You didn't just walk into their lives. You earned your place, because when someone is hard to reach, their presence becomes a privilege. Their attention carries weight. Their approval matters. That's not because they're cruel, it's because they're disciplined. They've built a fortress around their energy, and only the worthy are let inside. If you want to be powerful, stop trying to be loved by everyone. Stop apologizing for having limits. Stop softening your edges to make others feel safe. You're not here to be a public utility. You're here to be a force, and forces aren't free. They're not always understood, but they are respected. So let them call you distant. Let them call you selfish. Let them say you've changed, because power doesn't come to those who are liked. It comes to those who no longer need to be. You've been told your whole life that saying no is impolite, that it closes doors. that it makes you difficult, selfish, even unkind. But that's exactly why most people stay powerless, because they never learn how to wield the word no. Like the weapon it truly is, no is not just a rejection, it's a line drawn in steel. It's a shield that protects your priorities. It's the sword that cuts through manipulation. And in a world that constantly demands pieces of you, your time, your energy, your attention, learning to say no without guilt is not just a skill, it's survival. Because here's the harsh truth. Every yes you say from guilt is a brick in your own cage. Every time you comply to avoid disappointing someone, you abandon a piece of yourself. Every time you make yourself available to people who never earned it, you teach them that your value is negotiable. And once you teach someone that, they will never stop testing the limits of your generosity. The world is full of people who will disguise their neediness as love, their chaos as urgency, their dysfunction as your responsibility. They don't want your partnership. They want your energy supply. And you become their emotional provider, their unpaid therapist, their fuel station for every crisis they refuse to solve. But here's what you need to understand. You are not a rescue boat for people who refuse to swim. Being available to everyone doesn't make you valuable. It makes you exhausted. It makes you a target, because the emotionally needy don't want solutions. They want you drained. They want your constant attention, your endless patience, your silence when they cross your boundaries, and your applause when they play victim, and they will keep coming back. Not because they love you, but because you're easy. You don't owe anyone your light just because they live in darkness. You don't owe anyone your strength just because they've refused to build their own. And the moment you stop feeding them, their love turns to blame. Their affection becomes accusation. Their praise becomes guilt. That's how you know it was never love. It was control, and control has a language. It sounds like, "You've changed. You're cold. You used to be there for me, but don't fall for it." Because those words are nothing more than manipulation tactics designed to get you back into the cage you finally stepped out of. And here's the hardest pill to swallow. Selflessness without strategy leads to one thing: slavery. When you give without calculation, when you serve without limits, when you sacrifice without boundaries, you're not being noble, you're being harvested. You're bending your back for people who will never lift you when you break. And when you finally collapse from exhaustion, they'll vanish. Because their need for you was never about you, it was about what you gave. So draw the line. Say no with finality, not apology. Withdraw without explanation. Guard your time like a sovereign. And remind yourself daily, you are not here to carry the world. You are here to build something with weight, with purpose, with power. Let them call you ruthless. Because in a world that feeds on your softness, ruthlessness is what sets you free. Power doesn't come from being present all the time. It comes from being missed, from being so rare, so refined, so selective with your presence, that when you finally show up, people pay attention, because they know access to you is not cheap. It's not casual. It's earned. You were taught to be there for everyone, to answer every message, to pick up every call, to give your time freely as proof of love. But here's the truth. They never told you. The more available you are, the less valuable you become. Familiarity breeds contempt. Accessibility destroys mystique. People begin to assume your effort is automatic. Your support is guaranteed. And when something is guaranteed, it's taken for granted. You stop being a force and become a background convenience, the kind of person they only notice when you're gone. That's why you must become rare. Your energy should be expensive. Your presence should feel like a privilege. When people know they have to rise to meet you, when your attention must be earned through respect, consistency, and effort, they stop treating you like an option. They start seeing you as the standard. Because no one worships the one who always says yes. They worship the one who makes them wait, the one whose yes feels like a gift, the one who disappears without warning, and leaves silence louder than any speech. Power isn't in noise, it's in restraint. And when you finally understand this, you'll stop chasing validation and start commanding presence, because you were never meant to be common. You were meant to be rare and remembered. You don't owe your time, energy, or peace. to people who haven't earned it. That's the core lesson. In a world that constantly demands access to you through guilt expectations or emotional manipulation, your first act of power is learning to say no without explaining why. This isn't about being cruel, it's about protecting your direction. Your time is your most valuable currency, and if you give it away freely, people will never respect its worth. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're sacred. They separate those who support your growth from those who simply want to feed off it. If someone calls you cold for protecting your energy, they were never looking out for your best interest. They were looking for control. So reclaim your life, pull back. Choose wisely. Let your presence become a privilege, not a guarantee. Because in reality, the world doesn't reward selflessness. It rewards clarity, discipline, and restraint. The most powerful people aren't always the loudest. They're the ones who know their worth and never hand it out for free.